All right, welcome to the Inca Trail Machu Picchu tour. We are taking you all over Peru virtually, so you don't have to leave the comfort of your home. My name is Jenna Walker. I'm the program director here at Adventure Outings, and I'm joined by Riley Cox, our operations coordinator here at Adventure Outings. Fortunately, he can save his name better than I can. Thank you all for joining us tonight. And we'll get this started. All right, so I was able to travel to Peru back in 2005 and 2006, and it's a long story on how I got there, but a different day. But one of the places I was able to travel to was Inca Trail and Machu Picchu, and I'd always wanted to take people back to this place and share it with others. I always thought it would be in person, but surprise, now we have an opportunity to do it in virtual mode. So I hope you all will enjoy this, and feel free to ask questions along the way in chat. I am first to say I'm not an expert by any means on any of these areas, but it's an area that I love, and I'll do my best to answer any questions along the way. And feel free to ask those questions in the chat. And if you have any questions you'd like to ask verbally, then you can wait to do that at the end. We'd appreciate that. Also, if you would mute yourself, we'd appreciate that as well. Great, let's get this started. So we're going to travel all the way to another hemisphere, to the country of Peru. Here's a quick geographical reference for those of us who might need a little reminder of where Peru is at. The country of Peru is in the continent of South America, and we are going to find ourselves all over Peru. So if you're flying to Peru, typically you'll fly through Lima, and if you're lucky or unlucky, perhaps, you'll fly to Lima and then on to Cusco. There's a few different ways to get to Cusco, which is where we're going to begin our journey with the Inca Trail and Machu Picchu. One way is via plane. That's the easiest way. That's about an hour flight, a little more expensive. Another way is the bus. This is the way I took. It's about a 24-hour bus ride, which is quite a haul, but it's a pretty comfortable bus. This is a typical scene in a bus you'd ride. If you're looking for a little more adventure, this was another bus I took along the way. Not quite as comfortable, let's just say, especially if you end up on this very small chair here. But typically a very comfortable ride. It could be a very long ride. When I did this trip, the 24-hour ride ended up being 42 hours because I did this in the wet season. We happened to run into 2 mudslides along the way. So it's quite the adventure. So if you're looking for adventure and you have a little more time, the bus is always a great way to go. Whatever way you get there, you'll end up in Cusco. All right, so this is the Cusco area. You might have heard of Cusco before. Great. So Cusco is a beautiful city. It's known for its architecture, and it's just has these beautiful orange, brown colored roofs of tile, cathedrals, all kinds of great things. And there's a lot to do around here. I'm going to zoom in here to the Plaza De Armas, which is the central plaza in Cusco. And here's a nice view. Obviously not quite COVID times here. This is pretty packed, but beautiful cathedrals and fountains, plenty of people enjoying the day, and great views for days. There's also a lot of great museums here. It's a really great place to spend a few days. And when you're there, you definitely want to check out the local food and drink. So some of the typical Peruvian fare would include ceviche. This is a typical Peruvian ceviche. This is another dish, lomo saltado, which is essentially a beef stir fry. There's a pretty strong Chinese influence in Peru, and it's exemplified also in their food. And you can see French fries or papas fritas are also very popular. That's typical. This is kind of a typical meal here where you get rice and French fries along with the main. And this is my personal favorite. This is essentially corn on the cob or choclo con queso. You can also get choclo con sal if you don't do lactose so well. But this is a pretty tasty dish to nom on when you're exploring the area. And if you're of interest in age, this is the national drink of Peru. It is called a Pisco Sour. Pisco is grape brandy. But you want to go a little bit easier on those Pisco Sours if you are going to have any, because Cusco is at 11,000 feet above sea level. So it's recommended to spend at least 2 days. I would recommend 3, 4, even 5 days if you have the time before you venture on farther, because high altitude can really take its toll on you. There's an altitude sickness, acute mountain sickness. It's they call it soroche in Peru. All right, so some other great things to do in Cusco while you're acclimatizing. There's some pretty incredible Incan ruins right outside the city. It's an easy bus ride, or if you're feeling like it, along a acclimatization walk. So here we are at the ruins of Sexe Woman. The mnemonic is sexy woman, so I'm not the greatest at pronouncing things. So please bear with me as I fumble through some of this. Some of the other ruins that are very close by. This is Kenko. This is a especially interesting one. When I traveled here, as you can see, there's some stone stair steps that are carved into this rock. And from what I was told, there were potentially sacrifices that took place in different rituals for religious purposes. This is my first personal favorite site around Cusco. It's a little bit farther away. It's called Tiempo Mache. And Tiempo Mache is Quechua for guest house of drunkenness. Can't even make that up. That's not necessarily why it's my favorite place. What made it my favorite were just the very ornate baths and spas. And it was told to me that these baths and spas were used for a type of a resort for the Incan elite. And the architecture in there the stonework is just fantastic. So let's move on. We talked a little bit about the Inca. So a quick overview of who are the Inca. I think before that, we need to go to who came before the Inca. So essentially, the Incan civilization rose around the Peruvian highlands in the early 13th century. It was the last chapter of thousands of years of Indian civilizations. It was preceded by 2 large-scale empires, as you can see on the map, the Quarry and the Tiwanaku. The Tiwanaku were closer to Lake Titicaca, which is just southeast of Cusco, and then the Quarry lived around Cusco and then also to the northwest along the coast. Side note, Lake Titicaca is a pretty fantastic place to visit as well. So if you're just putting together a Peru trip, definitely add that to the list. So the Inca civilization rose around the 13th century, as I mentioned before. Most of the people spoke Quechua, and that's really important because a lot of the sites that we'll mention later are named in Quechua. This was the largest empire in pre-Columbian America. So really huge, and this is essentially at the height of the Incan Empire, where it stretched from the north in Ecuador all the way down towards Santiago in Chile, and then out towards Mendoza in Argentina. So a very vast empire. It's most of Western South America, really quite a huge empire. And To connect this empire, they built over 25,000 miles of trails and roads. So these folks were master builders and they got after it. And speaking of trails, that is one of the highlights we're going to focus on here. As we travel just outside the Sacred Valley to the Inca Trail. Most people will call it the classic Inca Trail or the Camino Inca, depending on who you're talking to. Yeah. So this trail is 25 miles in length, or 40 kilometers if you're going by the metric system. It's at high altitude. It starts out at 9,000 feet. Got a little map here for you. Climbs to just under 14,000 feet and ends at 7,300 feet. So like I said earlier, you definitely want to acclimatize and spend some time in Cusco and around the Sacred Valley up above 10,000 feet if you're going to take on any sort of hiking, trekking, mountaineering, including the Camino Inca. So when do you want to go? That's always the big question. So the peak season and also the dry season are about April to October. So that's going to be high season. It's also going to be the time when you're going to get the views and you're going to have the least chance of clouds and rain. I went in March and it was the wet season, which was good and bad. The good part was it was way cheaper, which was really helpful for me because I was pinching pennies, or soles as they say in Peru, quite tight. But it is rainy season, so you do have less of a chance to really potentially be able to actually see Machu Picchu or anything else. So when you go is up to you, and when you're able to go, but definitely take that into consideration. Do you want fewer people and cheaper prices, or do you want potentially those views and that better weather? So why would you go here? Well, I just went on a whim, but I encourage you all to go here for probably 3 reasons. One is that there's incredible Incan sites along the way, along the Inca Trail to Machu Picchu. 2, there's just beautiful sceneries and vistas. And 3rd, you enter Machu Picchu at sunrise, and most people can't enter till a little bit later in the day. So it really gives you that chance to watch the sunrise over Machu Picchu, which, if you're lucky, can be pretty remarkable. So let's get started on our hike here. Woohoo. We are traveling to kilometer 82. It's the start of the Inca Trail. The trail starts 82 kilometers along the rail line between Cusco and Machu Picchu. And right now we're looking over a suspension bridge on the Urubamba River. It's pretty tame here. Some nice, probably class 3 whitewater if you're looking for those kind of things. And over here, there's the thatch hut, and then there's the railroad line just above that. So here's a view when you're entering the trail, right near the railroad line. And if you're really lucky like I was, you get to see it in full-on class 5+ whitewater mode here with the Urubamba River. But today, not so much. It's a little bit more mellow over paddle there. So just a quick note on the Inca Trail, or the classic Inca Trail, Camino Inca, whatever you want to call it. The checkpoint is this little thatched hut area, and this trail is really heavily regulated. So it's really important, if you do want to go, that you know a few things. One is that pretty much, everybody wants to get on this, but there's limited space. So only 200 people are allowed per day. You have to have a permit, so you can't go on your own, and you have to have some sort of guide or go through a guided trek. And it's pricey. This was definitely the most expensive thing I've probably ever paid for. I don't usually do guided trips per se, but but I had several friends that went and said it was worth it and thought, all right, let's do it. So even as a guide and a snob in that sense, I recommend definitely doing this because it is a trip of a lifetime. So as we trek along, we trek close to the Urubamba River, start to gain elevation and get into some pretty incredible sights here. This is Patayacta. That is Quechua for elevated village. So elevated, obviously you can see that. And a nice little village here up on the hill. This was a site used for religious and ceremonial functions, crop production, and housing for the soldiers from the nearby hilltop side of Wilco Rockaway. And you can notice these slopes are terraced. They look kind of like stair steps. And this is a really important part about the Inca culture. And then also just people who are living there now are these terraces. So these slopes are terraced and used for agriculture. So folks have grown crops here, including potatoes, maize, corn, amaranth. And there's also alpacas and llamas that are raised not only for their wool, but also for their meat. And llamas and alpacas are also used for pack animals. When I was in South America, I developed a little bit of a fixation with alpacas. So we're just going to highlight this for a second. They're also very trendy. So I hope you all will enjoy this slight indulgence in a llama versus alpaca discussion. So a few differences between llamas and alpacas. One is that they differ in size. You can see the llama is much taller. Typically, llamas will weigh up to 400 pounds, and alpacas will be typically up to 150 pounds. Their ears are shaped a little bit different. Here on the right, the llama has these banana-shaped ears versus the alpaca on the left that has more of pointy ears. Its face is a little bit furrier, whereas the alpaca has a coarser hair of fibers. And it's just furrier. You just want to hug an alpaca. I do, at least. So, joking aside, they are very important animals in Peru and as well as other areas of South America as well. All right, we're going to venture from Patayacta and start gaining elevation. Moving up, this is one of the first camps that you'll get to. It's called Pompa. And this is kind of a typical campsite that you would see along the way. Definitely a lot of people. This will not be a solo trip for you in terms of having a lot of solitude. There will be a lot of people on the trail. But there's also a lot of really cool people to meet along the way. I made some friends that I happened to travel with for a few weeks afterwards. So if you're looking for your sole opportunity, not here, but a great opportunity to talk with some folks. So on the guided trips, they're fairly elaborate. This is a typical cook tent where you eat what is essentially a 3-course meal. It's usually pretty delicious. And the accommodations are a bit rustic. You're sleeping in tents, and if you're pretty lucky, you'll get this nice toilet. I enjoy this one. This set a nice place for putting your feet and taking a nap. Sorry if you can't handle the toilet, but if you can't handle the toilet, you might not do too well camping. But maybe you just do a day trip. And just a quick look around here. It's a beautiful place to camp. Just nice views. We're going to head up to the highest point on the Camino Inca, and this is Warmi Wanuska. And that is Quechua for a woman who died. And the reason I got that, I'm going to turn the camera a little bit and zoom in. Looking up at this rock, it's a little hard to tell from this angle, but where I have my mouse is a rock feature that looks like a woman. Her head is just a little bit to the left, and then her body is this large rock area. It's a little hard to see here. You have to use your imagination a little bit, but that is supposed to represent a woman lying face up. So here we are at the top of the pass, and of course it's a beautiful day here on Google Earth, as always. Looking down from the pass, this is at 13,170 feet, so that's pretty high. Great view. And we'll look a little bit to the south here. Oh, here's someone. Great. Yep, they're trying to catch their breath. It's a hike uphill and then a steep downhill. So one of the other cool things about this trail is that it passes through, there's so many different habitats. It begins at the river and then goes through cloud forests and then moves up to this high elevation before dropping back down to cloud forest. So super unique. Here's a view from along the trail. Honestly, this looks like this could be somewhere in Southern California at this point, but I promise this is Peru. And here's another view of the trail. I just want to highlight the stonework that has gone into this trail. And we'll delve into a little bit more about Incan stonework a little bit later towards Machu Picchu, but the Incans were master masons and had some pretty incredible work. And think about the amount of time it would take just to create this section of trail right here. I mean, I do a little bit of trail work myself in Upper Park, and I can't imagine how many hours this would take just for me personally to do this section. So that's something that's really interesting to think about. We'll take a breath from that high elevation and move a little bit farther down the trail and down in elevation to Puyupatamarca. Puyupatamarca is Quechua for city above the clouds. And as you see here from this pretty stunning view, yeah, it's not quite above the clouds in this shot, but it is definitely above the river and above pretty much all else. Here's some people enjoying that spot. So Puyupatamarca is unique for a few things. It contains some pretty sweet Incan ruins. There are 5 stone baths, which during the wet season contain constantly fresh running water. And here's a close-up on 2 of those baths. I'm not an engineer, but Riley will hopefully drop in the chat a link to some feats of Incan engineering if you really want to geek out and check this out. Within the Incan engineering system, there's just all kinds of different ways that the Incans used terraces and hillsides to their advantage. And one is essentially for drainage and then also for waterway systems. So this is just an example of what you see potentially underneath the terraces if you were to excavate the ground. It's essentially a filtration system as well for water, so that water could be filtered and then seep down into the ground. Moving a little bit farther down the trail, this is a pretty great site. It's called Huaytana. Huaytana is Quechua for forever young. Sounds nice to be forever young. That's the direct translation, but I think it also relates to forever growing in terms of growing crops. This is a pretty heavily agricultural terraced area. You can see there's a whole lot of terraces, and this almost like an amphitheater. And a little bit farther down here is a village. A little bit closer, just ignore this annoying girl here in the way. There's upper and lower house complexes, and those are connected by a staircase and different fountain structures. Unfortunately, I couldn't find a picture of that. And then above and below that are all these agricultural terraces. So someone was living here and living pretty large. They've got a good view of the river, and yeah, it's like not a bad place to hang out and live. As we move closer to Machu Picchu, we arrive at Intipada. Intipada is Quechua for place of the sun. And you'll hear Inti a lot. That refers to the sun god Inti, or Inti, yep, we'll get to that. But here is a nice view along the way of Intipada. And this is one of the lesser known sites along the trail, but this is one of my favorites, not only for this really pretty amazing view, but just for kind of being a low-key small village. This place was especially important because one of the main Inca ideologies is to maintain the balance between nature and the sacred places. And this place really had the nice balance of that, where it just felt like it was such a small place that blended almost right into the scenery. Complemented the hillsides. Now we are approaching what is essentially the main attraction here. We are at the Sun Gate, or Inti Huaytana, for Machu Picchu. This is pretty much exactly what it looks like if you get a clear day. So you're getting just a little hint of everything. And just a quick look around and look back. You would enter through this gate and then have quite sweeping views of the Urubamba River below and then Machu Picchu. So this is the final section of the Camino Inca between the Sun Gate complex and the city of Machu Picchu. And it's also one of the most important archaeological constructions along the whole Machu Picchu site. Inti Huaytana was the primary approach for the then capital, the Inca capital city of Cusco, to the southeast. This gate likely would have been protected by Incan soldiers. So this essentially was the control point where if there was people that they wanted to come in or leave out, this is where it would happen. And you can notice just in terms of the terrain that it's not exactly easy to sneak around here. There's forests, steep hillsides, so it's a bit of a great checkpoint in terms of all the features here for that. So a quick note about Inti. Inti is the Incan Sun God, and a lot of features within the Incan culture are dedicated to Inti. He was the most powerful god in Incan mythology. And because of this, the location of the Inti Huaytana, or the Sun Gate here, quick turnaround, the rising sun would pass through the Sun Gate, which I think is pretty awesome, that, you know, you could be sitting here waiting at sunrise and watch the sunrise right by sitting up at the Sun Gate. All right, we worked hard on the trail. We've been out. Typically, the traditional Inca Trail, or the Camino Inca, will take roughly 4 days. It's only 25 miles, but it is at high altitude. And why rush it? You know what? Might as well enjoy things along the way. There's plenty of great sites to soak up and history to take in as well. Right. So we came to Machu Picchu. Woohoo, we made it. And try to give a little better view of this for y'all so you can get a perspective of how crazy this is in terms of the location. So Machu Picchu is Quechua for old mountain. It's believed to have been built by I'm gonna mess this up, sorry. Pachacuti Inca Yupenquai, the ninth ruler of the Inca in the mid 1400s. Many archaeologists believe that Machu Picchu was constructed as a royal estate of sorts, but there's various theories as to why Machu Picchu is here. Plenty of other people believe that it was a sacred religious site, as there are many temples and other places of religious significance. So there's all kinds of theories on, well, pretty much everything these days. But one of the cool things about Machu Picchu is that no one knows exactly what it was for. To me, I think it's both. I think it was a very sacred place for Incan mythology and for religious practices, but it also seems to have evidence of the royal family coming to use it essentially as a vacation estate of sorts. But Riley can add something in the chat about all the different kinds of theories about Machu Picchu, because there are many of why this is here. All right, so this was built back in the mid 1400s. Took quite a bit of time, but 200 years later or so, it was pretty much abandoned. What happened was the Spanish arrived in South America in the 16th century, and after the conquest and then the plagues that resulted from them arriving, the Inca Empire fell in 1572. So really, this was only around for, not even 200 years. One other interesting thing about Machu Picchu is that essentially this is in a hidden location. I'm going to try to move us around here. So you see this is at the top of a mountain at a place where the river essentially makes a total bend around it, almost 360 degrees. This is a hidden place. This is a place where it wasn't necessarily meant to be found unless you knew where it was. So this hidden location actually helped protect it from the Spanish conquest and probably from a lot of raiding of it and destruction of it as well. It also makes it really well preserved and essentially an archaeological gem. Another thing that makes Machu Picchu really special is the construction. So this is just one example of what I would call thoughtful Incan construction. How thoughtful of you to put this beautiful mountain right in my doorway here. As a mountain lover, I personally love that. So essentially, Machu Picchu, one of the reasons why it's so significant, other than its religious and royal connections, is just for its construction. Essentially, it's the most spectacular urban creation of the whole Inca Empire and one of the most important heritage sites in the whole world. And the reason for that is because the Inca were essentially these master builders. And here's just an example of some of their building here. I'm going to give you a few quick facts as well. So we mentioned terraces earlier, the agricultural terraces. There are, I'll zoom out a second for this. Let me go to terraces. So there's over 700 terraces within the Machu Picchu complex. And we'll get a view of these terraces here. So 700 of those. The terraces help keep the stable soil or the soil stable, and they prevent landslides, which is really important in a place where everything is very steep. And here you notice there's some stairs. We'll zoom in a second so you can check those out. Basically, most of the Inca Trail is either ascending or descending stairs, and Machu Picchu is no different than that. The Incans love stairs, and I love them for that because they're beautiful stairs. But the whole Machu Picchu compound contains more than 100 separate flights of stairs. So here's just one flight of stairs. There's 99 more within Machu Picchu. That seems, to me, that's incredible. That's a lot of work, and pretty incredible feat of human accomplishment there. And we're going to go to a big zoom on here. We're here at the Quarry. So you're wondering, possibly, all right, there's a lot of stone here. Where did this come from? Well, here is a rock quarry where it's right on Machu Picchu where rock was quarried. And here I just want to highlight just the stone masonry that goes on, or that went on when Machu Picchu and the other features of the Incan Empire were built. So this stone masonry they used essentially to get these stones. They cut the stones using bronze tools and other harder stones. They didn't have any steel. They obviously didn't have any of the fancy tools that we have now. This was pretty impressive. And judging from the tool marks left on the stones, it's most probable that the Incas pounded those stones into place rather than cut them. And you can see most of these stones are not too big. Most of the stones in the city don't weigh any more than 50 pounds. No wheels were used to transport these stones at all. And as someone who's carried a few stones, not many in my life, I don't really want to carry any 50-pound stones that aren't on wheels. So that's pretty impressive. Here's just another example of incredible Incan engineering. There's a very elaborate waterway system within Machu Picchu, and this is just an example of a canal going down into a waterway. And essentially, the Incans were so good at stone masonry that this is an example of how good they were. No steel, no harder metal, just with bronze tools and other stones. They were able to do this, to be able to create this stone masonry where you can't even put a credit card through the cracks. To me, that's really impressive. But if you're not that impressed by stone masonry, don't worry, because we will move on to something else. Here's a view from the main plaza. This is down a little bit lower. We were looking across here. This is if you were standing right in the middle, and of course, no one is around, which is really nice. This is a view of Inti Huaytana. We're about to jump over to there. And looking back this way is a view of Machu Picchu, which we'll visit in just a minute. But not too bad of a plaza, to say the least. There's many different sites to see within Machu Picchu, and honestly, there's books and movies made about just this area, so it's a little difficult to cover all of them, but I'll just highlight a few. One is Inti Huaytana, and this is where this child should not be stepping, but this is the stone it's referring to. So if you remember before, Inti is the god of the sun. So this is a large stone in Machu Picchu that's basically up on a raised platform that towers above that plaza we were in. So no one really knows what its purpose is. Initially, it was thought to be a sundial where you could tell time, but recent research is showing that it has more to do with astronomical observations of some form rather than just being a sundial. So no one really is sure quite what things are sometimes, but there's always your imagination and different ways to figure out what was going on. So this stone accurately indicates the equinox when it's happening. So the fall and the spring equinox, which is pretty cool. So twice a year, the sun sits directly over the stone, casting no shadow. And that basically happens on the equinox. So towering above Machu Picchu is Huayna Picchu, which is Quechua for young mountain. Machu Picchu is the old mountain. Huayna Picchu is the young mountain. And the young mountain is what you see over to the right. It's basically the big peak right behind Machu Picchu. according to local guides, and take it as you will. If you're a guide, you know that guides like to have stories. But what I was told when I was there was at the top of this mountain, very, very top, was where the high priest would reside and also the local virgins. So every morning before sunrise, the high priest would come down with a small group and they would walk to Machu Picchu, and that would signal the start of the day. So not exactly the alarm clock I've a lot of before of a high priest and the virgins coming down, but you know, it could happen. And this was a sacred place for said high priest to perform different rituals. This is Temple of the Moon. This is on Huayna Picchu. Really cool place. And to get up to the Temple of the Moon, there are some really steep stairs. These are called the Stairs of Death. Can't really say if anyone's ever died there per se, you know, but they are quite steep. Steep enough where someone might want to fix a rope, perhaps. This is a bit of a mind-bending view down. So definitely go hike Huayna Picchu if you can. This is a separate hike from Machu Picchu. You have to get a special ticket, and but you definitely can't go during the wet season. Unfortunately, this trail closes. You can see why. It's quite steep and would be pretty treacherous. So unfortunately, I didn't get to go. But one of my friends sent me this picture and basically laughed and said, haha, it was great. Wish you would have gone. But yeah, definitely go there if you get the chance and if you have the ability, and probably if you aren't afraid of heights and falling as well. And after your trip is done, most people venture down to the town of Aguas Calientes. If you know a little bit of Spanish, you might know that means hot water or hot springs. It's always a welcome sound, especially after a long trip or really any time at all to hear about hot springs. And most people will take the train back to Cusco. It's about 3.5 hours. Beautiful ride by the Urubamba River and then through the Sacred Valley back to Cusco. And that is the end of the tour. Does anyone have any questions? Feel free, you're welcome to unmute yourself or type it in the chat.
Jenna, what was one funny story or like difficult moment you had on the trail?
I'm trying to think of something that's I've got one. I was pretty well acclimatized. I'd spent 3 months traveling around, starting off in Ecuador, venturing to Bolivia, and then jumping back to Peru. So I was pretty well acclimatized, but other people were not at all. And I was staying with a few folks and met up with some other people, and there were some Australians who were I'd classify them as rowdy, and they drank a lot of beer. And just for those of you who haven't traveled and had any drinks at high elevation, one drink at high elevation at 11,000 feet or so is equal to maybe 2 plus, depending on your tolerance. So yeah, there were some funny stories associated with that, but they learned the hard way. I did mention, I'm like, hey, y'all need to go easy, but the moral of the story is drink a little, eat a little, and then walk a little, but not a lot on anything. That's not necessarily a funny story. It's funny thinking about the consequences of that and not having to deal with them. Chris asked, where did you stay when you visited? When I visited Cusco, or maybe is there anything more specific? Yes. Okay. When I stayed, so my trip was 4 months. Most of the time I was moving from one hostel to another. Hostels are a really great way to travel and save money, especially if you stay in dorm rooms. In Bolivia and Peru, I often find a hostel room that would be anywhere between $3 and $8 or $10 at the most, which was really great. So I typically stayed in a lot of hostels and also did a lot of backpacking and some mountaineering in the backcountry as well. And that was a really great way to save money. Anytime you're traveling, especially in expensive cities or something, one way to save money is to just spend a lot of time outside and not pay for a hotel room. So if you're looking to go for a little bit cheaper, then I'd recommend that. There were some really great hostels in Cusco, some specific to like youth hostels and some where, doesn't matter what age you are, you're welcome to go. But when I was on the Inca Trail, we camped along the way and basically, camped in tents.